All right, guys, I took some time off to kind of pull myself away. I was so angry. I knew that we were in this state. But to see my son come in and reject my team, it all kind of boiled down to me being very, very emotional. And I wanted to pull myself out to give good information. I vented, and now I'm not going to really vent. I have one thing I'm going to do. It's not a vent, it's more like a plea. So I want to get into the information. I'll have film for you tomorrow. Going over, I'm trying to do a really good edit job. So that'll be tomorrow for the film study. But I want to get into some clear stuff. Analytics and numbers showing Tua versus the Green Bay Packers, what the defense did to us, how we responded, and compare it to the last three victories that we had. And, add some context between the teams so people can kind of understand why we are. See, when I do an evaluation, I try to put as much context in there so I'm not just projecting everything forward. Everything is so complicated in the NFL. You could beat the heck out of a team, play them again, and then you play them in the snow, or you play them in the heat in Miami, and all of a sudden the game flips as far as the results. And that's just one factor. So I'm going to put all that together because you'll see something I've been talking about for a while, and you're going to see something here, and it's kind of nuts, typical nuts. And yeah, it's going to point to protection because that's the truth, that's the reality. Protection sets everything up. Again, I say it all the time because some people don't get it. You don't need the best offensive line, the best top five, or the top five. You don't need top 10, but you certainly can't have bottom of five and the worst one in the league. I'm not saying we're the worst. We're not. We're close, but that's going to kill you. You got to be around that average 15, 16 in order to have a fair chance for your skills. So let's get into it. Before I do that, guys, the likes, the subscribes, the comments, the views. I got a bunch of subs over the last podcast or two. I really appreciate that. The comments, I'm trying to answer all of them. I'm so grateful when people take time to type stuff out and say something to me. I read them all, but I'm trying to get back to them. So just give me a little bit of time for that. So anyway, helping me out the algorithm gods is a blessing, and I am grateful. So let's take a look at this graphic here. Now, this is going to be the pressure and passing concepts, Dolphins versus Green Bay. I'll break it down. You got some little highlights, and we'll get into that. But let's start at the top with the pressure. So Tua is kept clean. That's from the left to right we'll be working. In the blue, long rectangle, 67% clean percentage. That's actually very high for most teams, but it's low for us. We're usually in a 75 to 80% category. So you can see Tua got most of his yards, 295 and 8.4 yards per attempt and 2 touchdowns in the 35 dropbacks that were clean. But look at the time. Focus on that time, 2.09. Okay? We're going to compare that to the clean time for other games, and you're going to see people don't get it. And I'm trying to explain it, but every tenth of a second it's big in the NFL. And you're going to see that a few tenths of a second and even less from what we've played previously before, it's gone up because they had 2 great safeties. And when you're playing high cover 2, those 2 great safeties are a huge asset. And it was the difference between the Bills and the Packers. I try to explain that pregame. It flips things. If you're playing solely man, you want to have awesome corners, and the safeties aren't as critical. But if you're playing high coverage all day, you certainly want those 2 safeties. And I was able to bump the time up because you can slow down that pass just a little bit by doing some things, and then as it gets a little bit higher, it makes it a little bit harder for the protection to hold up. And so focus on that 209. Under pressure, 32%, that's the red rectangle, 17 dropbacks, 11 attempts, 32%. huge. That's a lot of pressure. And it dropped to 6.4. Time to throw is 2.86. And you can focus on it and say he was holding the ball too long. Maybe, but you can't dial it in on that because when the quarterback moves, taking a couple of steps, that clock raises. And anytime there's pressure, the quarterback usually is moving a little bit. So it could be he's holding the ball too long. Could be that he's just on the move. You can't really dial that in. But what you can dial in is this. 80% not blitzed. So we were blitzed only 19%, and just about double the blitz percentage was pressure. So, 19 and times 2 is 38, but we had 30, just about 33%. That's a terrible ratio. All right. So of those not blitz dropbacks, 38 attempts, the speed of throw was 2.25 seconds. All right. And so that is about most teams' clean time to throw. And most teams can't even get that fast and clean time to throw. But when you're not blitzed, you're getting some pressures over there, and it's 2.25, and the clean is 2.09. So the majority of the passes are either between 2.09 and 2.25, which is super, super fast, but you still ended up with 32% pressure. And that is scary. But you'll see that we threw it much faster in the previous games, and that's what helped us out. But it's just not tenable. You can't have to throw it that fast. There's no quarterback that wants to throw it this fast. You throw it this fast, sometimes they get the ball out quick, but not, so the receiver can get it and have those rack yards. But you can't live off that. You want it much higher. You choose to get it out fast to get the pressure off you, but you want it to get higher because the longer it goes, the more time those receivers to get open. Time is not the friend of a defense. Speed of throw is not a friend of a defense. So passing concepts, play action, 19.2%. That's the green rectangle. Ultra low for us. Our pass rush mitigation, which is the combination, is my little thing. Play action and screens. It's designed to help out your protection and get the pressure off. This is the lowest we had all season. 19% and only 5.8% screens. Okay, no play action was 80.8%, and you can see time to throw is 2.29. So the clean, the not blitzed, and then the no play action, all that stuff is in 209 to 2.30 roughly, and you still ended up with that pressure, but that is super fast. That talks about how fast the pressure is getting in. It talks about how this is not a conducive environment. It also is going to show you why we call all the play actions. We were at 63%, I think, week 1. Why we call all these things, because we don't trust the protection. And McDaniel had to let go. Maybe it was his philosophy going into the game, or maybe because he was trailing, he had to get that thing going. He had to try to attack and not sit back. But unfortunately, that also opened up the pressure. And that talks about how poorly the offensive line is. Now, I'll get into the true pass set protection. So it's true pass set is PFF's not grading system. It's passes between 2 seconds to 2.5 seconds. That box where the majority of the passes go. If it's less than that, they don't count it because it's almost impossible to get pressure. So the job is so easy. They're not going to give you a grade on that in this framework. But then if it goes over 2.5, that's really a long time, and it gets a lot harder. So they're not going to get. So it's within this average, okay? And obviously 2 seconds is so fast. So we had the majority of our passes at 2.3 seconds. Not fast. So the true pass set protection over here you can see, and you can't put everything on it. Paul, he had 1 pressure. You see him at bottom, number 9, 83% efficiency. That's not good. On true pass set, you really want around 95-ish. We had a little bit low. Brewer had 97. I don't know how he was tested. I got to go through the film. Kendall Lamb, 91, 2 pressures. Robert Jones, 2 pressures, 94. Tehran, a little bit less than usual, a sack, and it was a pressure, 94. So you could see that by opening this thing up, we had the most, I believe it was the most opportunities for true pass set. It was 18. And so that was us being very aggressive. You only have 5 guys blocking. You're putting everybody into routes, maybe a chip and go. But this is as aggressive as you can get because you have more options out there, but you're risking a lot because you're asking your protection to block. But we didn't do a hot job, okay? Not a hot job at all. It wasn't totally easy, but they're not the best pass rushers. They're pretty good, but not elite. And if you look at the blitzes, a lot of blitzes came at the tail end of the game. It was through the bulk of the game. They were just kind of playing drop 7 and rush 4. So let's take a look now at the 4 weeks in total and compare everything so we can see something, okay? Green Bay, New England, Vegas, and the Rams. So you can see this graphic here, PRM to the left, pass rush mitigation, only 33% this week, 45% last week, 26 against Vegas, and then 41 against LA. All right, so you could see that New England's really not a great pass rushing team. They struggle to get the quarterback. Their secondary's meh. So we had the highest there. And then LA, you'd make sense a little bit because you had Verse. But their secondary was pretty poor. So when you have a poor secondary, you can kind of put more bodies there. And when you got super talents like Hill and Waddle and Jonnu, they can actually match up if the secondary is fully stacked, if it's not very good. But this week, we ran 33% and struggled because they have those 2 high safeties, okay? And they're a better team. And more importantly, we were chasing. Everything changes depending on the score. If you're behind or ahead or it's close, the whole complexion of the game changes. So pressures, 33% pass rush mitigation and 33% pass pressures. Last week it was 45% and 21. So you could see we loaded guys up there and slowed it down with the screen and it cut the pressure in half. But this week it was equal, which is not bueno. So Vegas, we had 26. It was a little bit less at 21%. LA, 41%. And it dropped a pretty decent amount to 34. But it was the balance this week. We couldn't get enough protection in. And when we did bring that extra protection, the pressure was still getting in. Now, look at the time to throw. 209, 184 versus New England, 191 versus Vegas. And those were high. This was 67% clean throws. That was like in the 75, 80% category. And then 203 with LA. So we threw the ball ultra fast. That offset a lot of stuff. But LA and Green Bay are sort of similar, except Green Bay has really way much better safeties. And so you could see the 203 went up 0.06 to 29, and it was not, it hurt. It hurt us. Okay, so the pressures were 34%, but they blitzed less at 13%. Green Bay blitzed a little bit more at 19%, but neither one were really blitzing. Okay, so we didn't have as many sacks against LA as they did Green Bay. So you're only blitzing 19% and 13%. You're bringing double the pass rush mitigation. It was triple versus LA. And then you're still getting that kind of pressure in both those games. What it says is Verse is better than Gary. So that was a big difference there as well. They had more pressure coming from the front and a weaker back end. Where Green Bay had pressure coming from the front, but a much better top. But you cannot get that kind of blitzing, throw that fast, have that much pass rush mitigation, and get that kind of pressure. Vegas and New England, not good teams. We were playing from ahead or sort of close, mostly from ahead, but sort of close. Changes things. This is a terrible, terrible, terrible framework. And so you have to understand that a quarterback is not going to do well having to throw that much and not getting blitzed and then still getting that much pressure and you're still keeping that many people out of the routes. This is and then now we'll factor this in another way. So if you're, when you look at Green Bay, they ran inside and it wasn't super effective, but it made the defense focus. It crept them up. You look at our box compared to Green Bay's box, and that opens things up. And so Green Bay was attacking every area of the field and finding success, but it was the inside run and pass balance that was getting the defense focused, kind of wearing them out, moving the clock, getting themselves on schedule, where conversely, you look at what I just showed you in the pass game. Look at this run game. This is like Dan Marino in the Super Bowl versus San Fran. That's how bad it was. So you can see rushing direction by totals. That's Miami's. ML, MR, and RG. That's all inside. That's A gap and slight edge of the B gap, okay? We had yards, -1, 1 for -1. Middle right, 1 for 1. Right guard, 1 for 3. We didn't even attack it, and we couldn't get anything done. Look at right end even, -1. QB's runs wasn't much. So you had all your success came off left end, 5 for 36, and that wasn't really, you can't live on that. So the defenses, they're looking, saying, all right, here we go. We're going to rush 4, play on nickel, play high cover 2. You're going to have to run inside to force us to come up so you can attack the edges. We're going to play edges, we're going to play pocket post, and we're going to play deep. Beat us inside, and we couldn't. And McDaniel kept doing the edges, passing, and throwing the football, and it just was no consistency in that. And so the limited menu means defenses can say, hey, you know what? We're going to open up. We're not going to really concern ourselves. We're going to play super light and focus on the hot areas. If they make us hurt us enough, then we'll change it. But if not, we're just going to keep doing this. And it gives them the edge. So if you're an offense, you come to the line of scrimmage, you know where you're attacking. You know the snap count. The defense should be puckering their butt on where they're going to go, where they're going to attack. I'm not sure. The play caller might have to bring something up in tight inside in the A gap. He might have to bring some to the edge. He's guessing all over the place. But the more stuff that you take away that he doesn't have to think about, the odds of him being right, calling the right play, and hitting the right sectors go up, and it moves the initiative from the offense to the defense. And that is never good. That is terrible. And this is what happens when you don't have an offensive line. You can't be balanced. And you have a limited menu. This is not, Dan Marino suffered. Remember, they came in and even like, I think it was Ronnie Lott says, we're going to try to play him normal. And like after like the first score, he's like, no, let's go switch it. They just dropped 7 or 8 DBs and said, oh, run inside. And they took away the pass and we couldn't win. We got blown out. Montana had like 230, 240 yards on the ground plus in the air. It's about balance. It's about holding the initiative, making the defense guard the entire field. We don't do that. It starts with the offensive line and it starts with the designer. Anybody who tells you that is wrong is out of their mind. That's why a bunch of people have been telling you that stuff and their evaluations are going into the crapola. This is basic football. It's not rocket science. I mean, it's 101. So the whole league, Mahomes, Allen, Lamar, Purdy, everybody attacks the inside. Everybody's investing in the offensive line. Look at San Fran struggling right now. Williams has gone down. And you can see everything starts crumbling. They have all kinds of problems because they've gone light on their offensive line. They picked up a nice guy in the draft, but they've gone very light. But you can see Minnesota, these teams are hanging in there. Tampa, all the teams that have invested inside and invested in the inside run game along with the rest of the stuff, they're succeeding, they're doing well, but we didn't because our GM thinks he's smarter than everybody else. He's smarter than history, and he is not. And he's going to eat crow, and anybody else who tells you that our offensive line's good, you don't have to run inside, their evaluation's going to the toilet. So understand, Tua might not get you to the Super Bowl, but there's no way if Dan Marino, who had a very similar build, couldn't carry you to the Super Bowl and win the Super Bowl, and only carried you once to a Super Bowl, that Tua could ever do that. And it's not on him. The team is not built right. Get back to you with some stuff tomorrow. Curtis saying, be well, go Fins. Curtis out. Online sportsbook today by getting signed up with acebread.com service that'll allow you to book action on sports from all around the world.